Welcome, folks, to episode number 46 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast, the podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well, and proud members of the GoCougs.com network, the undisputed number one Houston Cougars content provider. We're here today with all three of the old men, Tom Lidiak, former coach, Bill Walker, former player, and myself, Steve Chang, analytics guy for this episode. Well, our Cougars took care of business again this week in grinding out a Cincy win at home, 65-59, and then turning around to complete the KU sweep this season on Big Monday, 65-59, and extend our lead in the Big 12 to 4 games ahead of Tech and Arizona. There's no letting up for Samson's elite program as the Cougars battle to ensure a number one seed come tourney time. Now comes one final regular season game at Baylor, where a win could continue to distance ourselves from Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee for the third projected number one seed and potentially land us in the preferred Midwest region. With only one game to preview this week, the three old men decided to maybe look ahead towards March Madness again this week. So the special topic this time is going to be around what are UH's X factors, so to speak, to ensure a deep March run, which of course would hopefully result in our first national championship in men's hoops. So let's get into it, guys. In dissecting our wins against two of the historically top hoops programs in the Big 12 this week, let's begin with the post-game analyses of the grinding win over Cincy at home. Then we'll transition to your thoughts on the sweet Big Monday win over KU that resulted in a sweep of the series this season. Let's start with you first, Tom. What were some of the things you saw from a coach's perspective in the Cincy game?
Well, first off, last week we talked about Cincinnati being probably the most disappointing team as far as expectations go in the Big 12. And then again, they had won, I think, 5 of their last 7 or 8 games. And they came out and they played like a team that was a bubble team, a team that was facing elimination. They got off to a quick start. We were down 10-4. And then there were some substitutions made, and we went on a run. I have written down pretty much the 5 guys that were in the lineup when we made our run was JoJo, Terrence, Milos, Eman, and Malik. Then I think we got the lead. We scored like 9 straight points to go up 13-10, and then LJ subbed in for Sharp. We continued to click, and at one point we were up 37-22, so we had a 15-point lead, and then the foreign guy, Sheamus, I think it was, hit a 3 at the first half buzzer to make it 37-25, so we went into halftime with a 12-point lead. We came out right out of the bat in the second half going to Jawan, and I believe he scored 3 baskets like in the first 4 or 5 minutes. He had another basket later on. So he had, I think he had all 8 points in the second half. Day Thomas, Jizzle James made some tough shots for Cincy. This was kind of game I never felt threatened by Cincinnati. Terrence, he gave us some scoring, but he played 26 minutes and he didn't get a rebound. I'm sure that didn't sit too well with Kelvin and staff when they went to the film. LJ gave us a scoring burst. He had 20. And the one thing probably a lot of people want to talk about is we're kind of the shakiness versus the press. They were desperate. They go to press. It kind of looked like a diamond press, like a 1-2-1-1. I'm not sure if it was a diamond or just a man. But they were trapping the inbounds pass. They were like super aggressive because then they were denying the pass back to the inbounder. And, we were a little bit shaky against that. And my opinion on that is, when you're up by 9-10 and there's maybe like 2 minutes left, if you're aggressive and you attack the press and you miss, you're playing into their hands. But on the other side, the flip side, if you're conservative and don't attack, you're also playing into their hands. And when you're conservative and don't attack, you're vulnerable to turnovers. But we did get the ball in bounds in the deep corner. And not only do you have 2 defenders here in a trap, but you also have 2 extra defenders, the sideline and the baseline. So, we got to avoid getting the ball there. And then the other place is, and this is all clinic talk too. Clinic talk is great. You're undefeated when you're talking X's and O's in a clinic setting. I think it was Mike Tyson just said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So it's just a reminder that this is all clinic talk. But you want to avoid the deep corners on the inbounds. You want to avoid the trapping zone, which is the sideline near midcourt and especially past half court. You don't want to dribble across half court, pick your dribble up, get trapped because now you can't throw it back. You can't throw it behind you because that's a backcourt violation. And Coach Sampson, he's aware of all this, and he knows we need to improve in some areas there. But once again, I'm talking about the Bunyan on Miss America. We came out with a 73-64 win. I'd take it every day, twice on Sunday. If we can get a 9-point win once the NCAA tournament starts and we get 9-point wins 6 times in a row.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll be happy with people bitching about our press attack.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, Bill, how
As
about
long as it doesn't hurt us during that 6-game run.
Yeah. Well, again, as long as we win, right? To Tom's point. Bill, how about your views of the Cincy win from a player's perspective?
Yeah, and I'll reiterate a little of what you said, Tom. But 9-point win, 73-64. This could and probably should have been a 20-plus point blowout. But, aside from a couple of the concerns, this was a good win over a team that was desperate for an NCAA bid. I said going in that they were well positioned for an NIT run. Well,
you're right.
No question. Yeah, Cincy, they're rested, they're deep. So, they played, as you mentioned, Tom, we got off to a slow start. We were actually down 10-2. Outscored them the rest of the half, 35-15. It'd be up 12 at half. And I would say had point guard Day Thomas not been on fire, it could have been a really ugly first half for them. And I didn't even mention Thomas during the preview because he was their starting point guard last year. He's been coming off the bench for a lot of the year, and then when some of the other guys went to the bench, he got reinstated into the starting line. And he's never really been a great scorer for them, but he absolutely was against us. And if he hadn't been on fire, it could have been a really, really ugly first half for them. They're a team that does protect the ball well, but we forced them into 9 turnovers in the first half, and they were really playing right into our defense's hands. Second half, Tom, when not in foul trouble, because he was in foul trouble the entire game, scored 19 points on 8 of 12 from the field. And they also previewed, aforementioned, Jizzle James, were a bit of a problem for our guards, which was one area of concern I mentioned last week when addressing teams that could cause us some problems down the road. The other issue, and this is reiterating what you said, Tom, was handling the full court pressure. Yeah, it was a problem, and I mentioned it as a concern because it was a problem versus Iowa State, and kind of allowed them to get back into the game, and it allowed Cincy to get within single digits. We had only 2 turnovers at halftime, but ended up with 9 for the game, and several of them coming late when they began to press us and trap us in the corners, as you talked about, Tom. Uzan had 4 turnovers, and a lot of that due to the full court pressure. But on the positive side, LJ shot fairly well, led us with 20. Terrence and Malik, both coming off the bench, obviously, shot 9 of 14, scored 18 points, and really helped to offset from us miserable shooting from beyond the arc, 3 of 14 for the entire team. We only had, I think, 6 offensive rebounds for the game, and the team just needs to be the entire team, not just the guards that are back, but everyone needs to be aware of when the press comes. And we're going to need help. In the Kansas game, they pressed us late, and both in that game and Cincinnati, we were able to, on a couple of occasions, throw lengthy passes to our big men. I think the big men probably need to come up and support the press break, and I think if we get the ball to them, start moving the ball quicker, and even use on taking some timeouts from time to time rather than getting trapped and try to do everything that he can to get the ball to someone else, I think we should be okay. Bottom line, though, good win over, like I mentioned, a hungry team. And for the second year out of 2 in the Big 12, the outright Big 12 championship.
Yeah.
And we spent the post game cutting down the nets. Great accomplishment for the team, and off to the postseason after we handle Baylor.
Nice. I mean, looking at it from an advanced analytics perspective, it was as we expected: slow paced, physical defense, and just a grinded out win, 73-64. Probably should have been a win by a larger margin, like you had highlighted, Bill. But since he started pressing us when really the game had gotten out of reach, we were up 19 points with less than 7 minutes to go. This is a huge game for Cincinnati, as you guys had both mentioned coming into the game at the time. They were somehow still on the bubble as a next 4 out, according to Lenardi. And a big win at UH where we had nothing to gain would have likely almost sealed the deal for them to get in. But that wasn't going to happen to a Coach Sampson team. So again, we limited them to 49% effective field goal percentage and only 30% from three-point range. And then pair that up with forcing turnovers on almost 18% of their possessions, and since they just couldn't get anything going. Only thing they did well was getting offensive rebounds on over 34% of their misses. For us offensively, we shot lights out inside. Effective field goal percentage at over 56% and over 64% from two-point range. Key stat of the day that ultimately kept the game as close as it was around turnovers, where we had 5 of our 9 turnovers overall for the game after the 7-minute mark of the second half, when the game was out of reach with a 19-point lead. But we'll take, again, the 9-point win and move on, because the big Monday showdown versus Blue Blood KU was up next in 2 days. For KU, yet another short turnaround, which I hate. But guys, I got to admit that I love being showcased on big Monday games. Let's begin with you first, Bill. What were your quick thoughts from a player's perspective with this win over KU that gave us a sweep of the series this season?
Well, first off, there are a few people that I've got to thank. To Claudette Mendoza, thank you so much for the ticket and for getting me into the building. It was one of those rare occurrences where everything was spoken for, and it kind of came down to the end, not right at the end, but close. And then secondly, to my friend Brian Hiskey, former U of H golf standout, and to Don Houchin, thank you for the upgrade. Tight game, close game, emotional game, and I ended up 5 rows from the court,
nice.
Right court, and so great seats. So thank you very much to everyone. Now, to address our analytics guy who questioned my mental state when, after the game, you, Tom, texted that Kansas kept the game close, and I disagreed. Was the game close? Of course it was. Absolutely. We were down in the second half. We ended up winning by only 6 points. However, here's the disagreement. Did Kansas keep it close?
Absolutely. You're not giving them credit?
I would argue absolutely not. And 20 Kansas turnovers would wholeheartedly support me. This game is it's a typical Kansas road blowout loss if our rims didn't have lids on them. We took 26 more shots than they did for the game. 26, and we made 5 more shots than they did. What that means is that on the shots that we took, above and beyond what they took, the 26 shots, we shot under 20%. I mean, shots just didn't fall. We were the better team. We forced 20 turnovers. They did nothing to keep themselves from getting blown out. It just was one of those nights where we didn't shoot well, and we had good shots. They just didn't fall. But we outplayed them. We played our typical exceptional defense. We held them to 59 points. The aforementioned 20 turnovers to our 6. We out-rebounded them by 3, and that's only because so many of our shots did not fall. We had 17 offensive boards to their 5, and their turnovers led to 16 U of H steals. Kansas did next to nothing to keep that game especially close. The defense absolutely rests.
Hey, Bill.
No,
Bill,
I don't even want to hear it, Steve.
you're sounding like some of our fans. You do realize Kansas has the number 6 defense in the country, so there's a reason. There's a partial reason in terms of why
I'm
our
not
shots didn't
complaining about.
fall. So they did something to impact our shooting, right?
It'd be
Number
one thing
6, baby.
It'd be one thing if they were tough contested shots, but we had open looks. We had good shots. They just didn't fall. It doesn't mean that they're. I mean, we've been shooting well all season. I mean, so many times we've come on, and for a defensive and rebounding team, we come on. We talk about how we shot over 50% from the field. Our effective field goal percentage, which you get into, is in the high 50s, 60%. I mean, it's been a great year. I have no complaints.
Absolutely.
It just happened to be one of those games where there just seemed to be a lid on the rim on both rims for us, and it just happened. But I'm going to give Kansas little to no credit for that. I mean,
That's where we're going to disagree.
20 turnovers. 20 turnovers. They're just not that good. And, it was a tight game, and they played hard. They actually created a few turnovers at the end again
game,
with their
Bill?
press. But, pardon me?
It was a tight game?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I said right from the onset. I said right off the bat it was a tight game.
Yeah, just giving you crap, Bill.
But where I think, Todd, you were dead wrong, and where I am absolutely right is that Kansas did not make it a tight game. The fact that our shots didn't fall, the fact that Kansas, rather than making it a tight game, turned the ball over 20 times, it could have easily led to them being blown out. It just didn't happen. And you know what? Sometimes that's the case. We've had games this year where we've been up big, and I think it was maybe TCU we let back into the game at Fertitta. I mean, they're just games where we're clearly the better team. We just don't end up with the margin that we should have. And this was one of those games. We're clearly the better team. We're the superior team on both ends of the floor in every aspect of the game. The shots just didn't fall. And yeah, I give Kansas little to no credit for that. But I give them full credit for 20 turnovers.
Spoken like a true fan.
No, spoken like someone who actually watched the game. I have more criticisms when I come on, or concerns than anybody. We got the win and sent the seniors home sent them away with a great win in their last game at Fertitta. I have no issues with coming away with the win. It just was a game that Kansas had nothing to do with the fact that it was close. Absolutely nothing. Period. Cryer actually was the one player who shot very well from the field. Yeah. Tugler was all over the boards. He only committed one foul in 27 minutes. But my star for the game, well, certainly Cryer, but also Wilson.
Yeah.
But he got the start because it was senior night. 27 minutes, scored 10 points, but 5 boards, 6 assists, and 4 steals.
Yeah,
he
crazy.
is going to be absolutely key for us as we make our run to the title. I do want to mention one Kansas player of note, and that would be their All-American center, Hunter Dickinson. He almost had a triple-double against us. 17 points, 12 boards, and 7 turnovers.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
At times, I thought he played very intimidated. His shots, it looked like oftentimes he shot the ball quickly without really gathering himself, and the shots were off. He's a great passing big man, but I thought he got rid of the ball quickly several times, and his passes were off as well. And I thought he probably hurt them as much as he helped them throughout the game. And I would have loved to have seen him achieve that triple double, but he was awfully
He was
close with
close.
the 7 turnovers. But another conference win, and like I said, senior night, just a great win, and it was awesome seeing. I didn't see this at the game, but I saw it on tape afterward. Calvin with some tears coming to his eyes
Yeah.
when he hugged Juwan after the game.
Wow.
That was pretty special to see. So great night for the seniors. Congratulations to them, and off to an NCAA title run.
Yeah, completely agree. Tom, how about you from
You
a coach's
should.
perspective? No, I'm only agreeing in the last part, not your assessment of what impacted our shooting.
Okay,
Hey, Tom.
Kansas, if you listen to our podcast, you know how much I love Kansas.
Yeah.
That sarcasm. They're 10-9 in conference right now. I would say I almost feel sorry for them, but I don't. If you know what the term Schadenfreude means, I get a little bit of that every time I see them lose. Senior night, senior day, it was awesome. Pre-game. The only disappointment was I wanted to hear more stories about when Juwan played with Elvin Hayes and Don Chaney.
That's so funny.
The big key, it was 30-27 at halftime, and the only reason Kansas was that close was Milo's picking up his second foul with 17:03 left in the half. So he sat down for the last 17 minutes, and that's probably the only thing that kept Kansas in the game in the first half.
The only
I was listening to Kelvin's radio show, and he was talking about how Milo's got that second foul for reaching in and hacking. Well, if you get one foul, you got to be a little bit smarter than that, especially you never know. Sometimes officials will let some of that hacking go, and sometimes they don't. So that second foul, reached in, got it, sat on the bench, and Kelvin said, he told Milos, "You're going to sit here for the rest of the half. I'm not going to put you back in the game because you won't learn your lesson." And so there's no way he was going back in the game. So kudos to Kelvin for doing that. Bill, you mentioned LJ, 22 points. You said Bill had a shout out to some people for some tickets. So I want to give a shout out to John Elsley. He's on the message board, and Randy Randell for seats. And I mentioned that because one of the seats was 3 rows from the baseline, and watching Cincinnati play defense and then watching Kansas play defense, I thought it was tougher for us to get a shot off versus Cincinnati's defense as opposed to Kansas. I thought
exactly
for some reason it just the analytics, I don't know what it is. The analytics say Kansas is the 6th best team in the country, but when I'm watching the game and it's not on TV, you're so close to the court. Yeah, it appeared like it was hard to get shots off, good shots against Cincinnati than it was Kansas.
correct.
And which Bill's point was, we got shots, but we missed them. So whatever you want to make of that, that was just my eyes looking at the game. I did think that we exploited Dickinson a little bit in pick and rolls. He doesn't move very well laterally and doesn't recover very fast. He's not very fast, so I think we exploited some of that. I thought Dickinson did a better job in the second half with his defense. A lot of things to talk about. Kansas, whatever you want to believe. The game was close. Galen Robinson mentions something about, he calls it positive fear. And he says when you come in and you play U of H, you come in with a positive fear, knowing that if you don't go out there and match our intensity and our toughness, you're going to get blown out of the building. And I think that's what happens in a lot of our games is we get the other teams, we get their best punch. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You'll watch a team play. Iowa State played us, and then you watch them the very next game, they get beat. I think it was by Oklahoma State. Kansas State ran them out of Hilton. Those teams don't play like that against us, except BYU might be the except early in the year when we blew them out. Malik had probably the 2 plays of the game. making that steal and the dunk, and then that little dipsy do he had where he went up against Dickinson and finished on the other side of the basket. That was an amazing shot. Another thing about KU, it's gotten to a point where their fans are claiming moral victories. You got this blue blood program, and they're like, well, dang, we played Houston close. Thought I'd never see that in my life. Bill Self, another one I want to talk about. He just seems resigned. He put out that statement the other game. Zeke Mayo got those death threats and stuff, and then Bill put out this statement. It's pretty much probably coming from the sports information director or whatever, but it just seems like resignation. Press conference in our game. Again, it's hard to see like any fire there. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. I guess we'll see at the end of the year. Dickinson, Bill, you kind of talked about him. 7 turnovers. I counted at least 3 deflected passes that led to steals. Just lazy passes. No pass fake. Just got the ball and threw it without pass faking. They were deflected. Ended up in turnovers. I'm glad he did it, though. He had 1 turnover on an offensive foul where he was posting up and he just manhandled, I think it was Malik out of the way, got called for an offensive foul. And then that horrific pass that he made, he made to Malik, and Malik goes down and dunks
it. Yeah.
I've never seen Bill Self put both hands over his face more times than in the game against us. And that was one of the times that he did that. Hunter Dickinson, what's his legacy going to be at Kansas? Well, I think his legacy is going to be he played 2 years for Kansas, and they were 2 of the worst years in recent Kansas history. I think that's going to be his legacy. Not sure what it is. I had a chance to sit close to the court, so I kind of saw his body language. Nothing. It's almost like he's a flatliner. Not a whole lot of negative body language, but not a whole lot of positive body language either. It's like the factory worker who comes to work and he punches in and he punches out, and that's kind of the way I feel about him. As so-called best player on Kansas's team, it's not like he uplifts his teammates and inspires you to play harder or play better. So who knows what's going on with Kansas, but I'm glad they're having those troubles. Let's see. Didn't get much from JVA on offense. He played 15 minutes. He got 3 rebounds. Or Terrence. Terrence, offensive struggle this game. 0 for 7, 0 points, 2 rebounds in 19 minutes. So, yeah, that's a few more things. It looks like KJ Adams had a pretty good game. Talked about Dickinson already. Rylan Griffin. What the
invisible
heck with him? Played 11 minutes, 0 for 4, 0 points for Rylan Griffin. My guess, it's defensively. Probably the same thing with AJ Storr. It's probably on the defense end. Dwan Harris, the so-called best point guard in America a year ago, he took 2 shots, guys. He played 34 minutes and he took 2 shots. He had 2 points. He had 2 assists. And bench, every time Self took out Baidunga, I cheered.
Yeah, I agree.
I was saying, good call, Bill. Good call. Baidunga only played 16 minutes, and it wasn't because of foul trouble. He only had 1 personal foul. The little guy for Kansas, Coit actually might have been their best player that night on the offensive end.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
14 points. However, on the other end, here another one where Bill put both hands in his face. LJ was in the corner. Coit's guarding him. Malik drives. He really hasn't beat his man. He's around the elbow area, and it's not like Malik is, gonna finish at the rim. For some unknown reason, Coit goes over there to stop the ball. You never leave a corner man to help, not with the 3-point line these days. And not only did he leave his man in the corner, he left LJ Cryer, one of the best shooters in the country. LJ knocked down a corner three, and you just could see the disbelief on the Kansas staff. AJ Storr, Bill, your man, Wisconsin guy. AJ Storr, 5 minutes, 0 for 1. He had 2 more points than a dead man would have.
Yeah, he played right to what I said about him last week. He's one of their most consistent players. He's bad at home and he's bad on the road.
And here's
Perfectly
the deal.
consistent.
Talking about how many times Bill had both hands in his face.
Yeah.
They threw Storr was wide open, and somebody threw like a baseball pass, and he went to catch it, and he glanced over his shoulder to see from U of H was coming, and he let it go right out of his hands, out of bounds, and Bill went immediately to the bench, after he put his hands to his face, and he got him out there. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens to Kansas. I don't have any sleepless nights worrying about them, but it's really good to win 65-59. And the seniors got to speak a little bit after the game. I thought it was kind of funny when Emmanuel started to chant for Jawan, one more year.
One more year.
That was funny.
Yeah. As you guys had highlighted, Kansas has been extremely up and down this season. And for this game, we're coming in after another loss at home, this time to Tech. Of course, no sympathy for KU because this was another opportunity for us to show who the new big dog at the Big 12 was. And the sweep of the series versus KU put an exclamation point on that. So with a back and forth win, we're one step closer to our number 1 seed come March Madness. From an advanced analytics perspective, this was yet another, what I considered a heavyweight battle with 2 of the best defenses in the Big 12, both top 6 in the country, as I had highlighted, slugging it out. We limited KU inside, where they rely heavily for their offense, finishing the game at effective field goal percentage 51%, but under 42% from 2-point range. It was a thing of beauty as we blocked 20% of their 2-point shots and getting steals on 24% of their possessions. Again, what allowed them to keep things close was their out-of-the-ordinary accuracy from 3-point range, especially Coit, who was just playing out of his mind on offense. On the flip side, it was one of our worst shooting nights offensively, just over 40% effective field goal percentage, under 36% from 2-point range. But thankfully, we had a crazy 46% offensive rebound rate on our misses. And with Malik Wilson taking over on senior night, boy, what a godsend. Key stat of the game, we took 16 more shots than KU did for the game, 68-42. That's a demoralizing
26.
26. You're right.
You're the numbers guy. Come on, man.
Yeah. You're right. I can't do my math. I'm the analytics guy too.
Strengthening my argument. Thank you.
But that was a demoralizing ass kicking, no matter how you look at it. Now let's get to our final regular season game of the season. A game at Baylor that we thought coming into the season could be for the Big 12 championship. How wrong we all were. Tom, why don't you go first from a coach's perspective with a quick preview of the Baylor game?
First off, you said we thought that it might be for the championship. What's this we shit, Kemosabe?
No.
I didn't have Baylor.
We had them fourth. We said it could be.
Oh, we had them fourth. Okay.
Yeah, we had them fourth as a group.
Not number 2, right?
No.
Okay.
That just could be, right, depending on how things went. They were
okay.
We had them pretty high up there in conference, right?
Is this coming from Mr. Five conference loss?
No, I'm completely wrong.
Me.
I'm happy.
No, I was talking to Tom. Actually, both of you.
I had 4, I think. Four to win, and I didn't think we'd win. I thought we'd have 5 conference losses.
I'm happy to say I was dead wrong on that.
Yeah, me too. No kidding.
I was happy.
Me
too.
Take that.
Okay.
How about you two?
I kind of like the sandbag. This way you kind of the disappointment's not as much if we don't achieve. Anyway, Baylor. We'll see. It should be a U of H win. It's on the road. Baylor's kind of one of those teams that you never know what you're getting.
Yeah.
What was it Forrest Gump said? Life is a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, that's Baylor.
Yeah.
We're healthy. Knock on wood. We're healthy, and that's the most important thing heading into this last game. And speaking of that stupid conference tournament, here's my theory: we should play the first game, win it,
Yep.
and then either play our subs at second game. Or how about the starting five just pick up 2 fouls real quick so Kelvin has to sit them?
I'm with you. I'm with you 100% there. Win one game and then play your backups.
I don't know how many out there listened to Kelvin's radio show the other night, but that's what he says. He's not crazy about these conference tournaments. But, Kelvin is the ultimate competitor.
Yeah.
And when the game starts and they're keeping score, it's hard for him not to put everything into it and go for the win. These are Kelvin's words. He said flat out, the only reason we're having these tournaments and, in a big conference like the Big 12 is money.
Money, yeah.
And that's the only reason. The only people who are concerned about this tournament are, number one, ISU, because that's their Super Bowl. I mean, they'd rather win that than the national championship, Teams on the bubble and teams that aren't on the bubble whose only shot is NCAA bid is to win the tournament. I hate it, this time of the year because we're finally healthy. And Kelvin went into the idiocy of these tournaments. And I'm sorry I'm digressing from Baylor game, but it's possible you're going to play 3 games in 3 days. Last one being Saturday. And then sometimes you'll get a Thursday game.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on where you're playing. Pretty much you hop on a plane on Sunday and you travel and you're playing Thursday if you're playing 3 games in 3 days and the players are exhausted.
Yeah.
Mentally and physically. So it's I hate it. I can't say how much I don't like these conference tournaments, but I'll let Bill talk about Baylor.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill, from a player's perspective.
All right. Well, when we last talked about Baylor, I said that they were likely in the NCAAs, but after 3 straight losses and at the time a 16-12 record, they probably needed to win 2 of their final 3 games. So with a loss to us on deck, Baylor took care of business. They beat Oklahoma State, and then they barely beat TCU on the road to put themselves at 18-12 overall, 10-9 in the Big 12. That's good for right now a 6th place tie with Kansas. Baylor's in, and right now they're currently projected a 10 or an 11 seed in all the projections that I've seen. This game probably means a little more to Baylor, although I don't see much advantage to being a 10 seed over maybe an 8 seed, and Baylor would have to at least a couple games in the Big 12 tournament to get themselves up to an 8. And actually, I'm not even all that hot on some of the projected 6 seeds, but one win in the Big 12 tournament should lock Baylor in it at either a 9 or a 10. Of note for this game, Baylor has 12 losses, but only 2 losses this year at home. A 3-point loss, bad loss at home to TCU, and 7 to Arizona. That's it. They've beaten everyone else at home. So this game could very well be closer than one might think. Mention a few guys, and we've talked about them before. We didn't play them that long ago, but Norched O'Meara, who had a really good game against us, he still leads Baylor with almost 16 points and 10.5 boards per game. He's been leading them in scoring and rebounding most games. The 5-star Edgecombe, he's next at almost 15 points a game, and he's now shooting 36% from 3. Against us, he was 5 of 5 from the field, 14 points, 6 boards, but he committed 5 turnovers, so he's aspiring to be Hunter Dickinson. Their other players, their best players, all backcourt players, Roach, Nunn, Wright, Langston Love. Love maybe a little bit more of a small forward, but Roach none right.
Is it Love out for the year though?
Guards.
Is Love out for the year?
I don't know if
I'm
he
not
is. It
sure. I
had
know
to have
he's
just
hurt
happened.
again. Yeah, he's hurt again.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I didn't hear that he was out for the year, but honestly, I don't know. But if he's out, then it's going to be more on the guards. And all of those guards can get hot. They can all get to the hoop and draw fouls, which is what they do when they win. When we beat them 76-65 at Fertitta, we had 5 players in double figures. We assisted on 17 of 27 made field goals, and we only turned the ball over 7 times, while Baylor shot just a blistering 58% from the field, 60% from 3, but they did cough the ball up 15 times. To win this game, we need to certainly shoot better than we did against Kansas, which we will do. We need to move the ball well like we did against Baylor the first time. We need to hit the offensive glass because we're going to be bigger and we're more aggressive and we're a better rebounding team. We need to, if they send their guards at us, and they did in the game at Fertitta, they trapped late in the game. They caused some turnovers, which we've addressed. We need to play through the traps and their press. We need to limit our fouls against them. We need to defend the perimeter and contest as many of their outside shots as possible. And I think we will absolutely do enough of all of those things. We'll play well enough. But I do think it'll be a relatively close game. I have us winning 72-66.
yeah, I think
And,
we're
and
going
I
to be
will say
close.
this: I would say Baylor would be motivated because it's senior night, but they already had their senior night.
They did, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to
Smart.
cut my section short so we can get to the special topic. Surprisingly, Baylor is still number 30 in KenPom. And again, they're coming off 2 key wins over OSU and TCU. Based on the metrics, this is projected to be a tight 5-point win on the road for the Cougs based on KenPom. I think we're going to be motivated. I think they're short on people, so I'm actually predicting a larger 72-64 8-point win for the Cougs. So we'll see. Now, as we continue to look towards March Madness, how about we all look into what we believe our own X factors to optimize our chances for that March Madness run are, and potentially our first national championship. Again, we'll do a deeper dive once the actual brackets come out, but for now, let's look internally as to what needs to happen with the team as they make their final push and why. And so, Bill, what's your take on any X factors for our Cougs heading into March Madness?
Who is our X factor? I would actually take either end of the spectrum. One, I would say who isn't, and then I would also argue that we don't have an X factor, or that everyone is and can be our X factor in any game at any time. When we get into Sweet 16 games, I think there will be a lot of playing our starters plus Malik and Francis. And I'll mention Arsenault, but I feel like there are times when he looks a little lost on the court on both ends, and I think, given that we don't get into foul trouble, that things play out as they should, I think his minutes may not be as much. So I could make a slight case for him as an X factor, but probably not as much. And here's what I'd say you can argue. One, you could argue Tugler because when he's on the floor, when he's not picking up fouls, he's aggressive, he's athletic, he blocks shots, he's just difficult for anyone to contain, but he needs to stay on the floor. You could say Francis could be the X factor because when Tugler and or Roberts get into foul trouble, Francis has been a defensive and a rebounding machine.
Yep.
He's come around in terms of his offensive game. He's hitting his free throws. He's been a lot better. So you could argue for him. Roberts could be an X factor if he could dominate inside. He's making his shots. He's coming off his right shoulder and getting the left-handed jump hooks up, which he's become pretty deadly at. Not only can he lead us in scoring, but it also forces teams to sink in on him and open up the kickouts for open threes. Wilson, obviously, you could argue he's so good defensively. He's so quick and athletic. He can literally create and deliver scoring opportunities, regardless of which side of the court he's on. Uh, Arsenault, who I just mentioned, he just has to know where he is on the floor. He needs to not overthink things when he does have the ball. He's talented. He's certainly got a very good skill set, and he could absolutely help us, especially offensively. He's got to play, not I think he overthinks things and gets himself into trouble. You could say Cryer could be the X factor. He's been our leading scorer in 8 of the last 11 games. He's our most experienced postseason player. His leadership has evolved. His solid shooting, those will be critical. And I think we need to get him probably minimum 12 to 15 shots a game as we progress through the tournament and start encountering the better teams. Uzan, for sure. Since West Virginia, he's been more aggressive. He absolutely runs this team. He's got to be quick to move the ball versus pressure and presses. And he needs to demand the ball down the stretch of games and get to the lane and either kick out or take shots, which I think he's very smart at determining the best thing to do and getting it done. And finally, Emmanuel. And he could possibly be my choice, but not by much. He's led us in scoring 7 times, but the last time he led us in scoring was January 11th. Now, if he's fully healthy, and that's the reason that he hasn't led us in scoring for the most part since, in almost 2 months. If fully healthy, I think he's got to be more consistent shooting the ball, which probably means confidence. And I'd like to see him more aggressive off the dribble, because if he can get to the line and he's strong enough, he can certainly do that. He's absolutely deadly, and we're in great shape if he's shooting free throws. So, there's 8 arguments for 8 different players. It could be any of them or it could be none of them. I think this boils down to the fact that we're a team. Everyone gets involved. Everyone plays a role. And I'm not sure that there's one X factor that we're going to need or depend on going forward.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting take. Kind of like the old Phi Slamma Jamma team as well. Like year one with Clyde, every game it was like someone else coming up big in the tourney. So yeah, interesting take. How about you, Tom? From a coach's perspective, what's your X factor?
Yeah, I'm kind of taking Bill's approach as far as X factor. My X factors have to do really with none of the players as far as their playing ability. Number one X factor, I believe, is health.
Yeah, that's good.
We need to get through Baylor, and we need to get through that blasted conference tournament without anybody getting hurt. That's the number one thing right now. I think that's our number one objective. Yeah, we want to go to Baylor, and yeah, we want to win conference tournament. Yes, I'd say just cancel it, make a banner for Iowa State, give it to them, whatever. Okay, let them go to Hilton with their 17,000 people, and they can have a party there. But health is the number one thing. Number two is staying out of foul trouble, especially Milos, and I believe especially LJ. Those two are key. Yeah, you don't want Jawan getting in foul trouble or JoJo or E-Man. But I believe those two cannot get in foul trouble. And if I say between Cryer and between Milos, which one, don't get Milos in foul trouble. Milos, just stay out of foul trouble. We saw what happened in those early losses in November when he picked up his 4th and then when he fouled out. So that's number 2. I'd say number 3 is the X factor will be what type of teams we face in the tournament as far as matchups go, team-wise. That plays a big part too. I look at Miami game a couple of years ago, and that was just that ended up being a tough matchup for us. Bill, you talked about this. We're a hard team to game plan for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Juwan had those games in a stretch there. I can't remember which game it was. The Kansas game kind of stands out to me. There was a stretch there where they weren't giving any help. They would short roll Juwan. He'd get the ball in the middle of the floor, and then he would go to work using mostly that left hand. But teams take that away. But that's going to open up something for somebody else. So we're hard to game plan for. Okay, you want to go out there and you want to stop Juwan? That's going to open up something for somebody else, for one of the guards. You want to shut down LJ? All right. Milo. So you go in there, you probe the defense, shoot your little floater, etc. So hard. We're just a hard team to game plan for. The team is a superstar. Bill and Steve, you guys mentioned this. It can be any one of our players any night. I mean, it was Malik at Kansas that kept us in the game in the first half. JVA's had his moments. Terrence has had his moments too. So, we're 8 men, and as long as we stay healthy, stay out of foul trouble, I'm good. And I'm thinking we're going to win 6 in a row and win that first national title.
Yeah, very cool take.
By the way, and I'll mention one other person. My good friend Ronnie Bradshaw mentioned to me that every single time in U of H's history that they've made the Final Four, it's been out of the Midwest region.
Oh, has it?
Just an interesting.
Okay.
And where's the Midwest being played this year? Is it Atlanta?
Indy.
Is it Indy? Yeah, I wasn't even sure. Okay. Yeah, interesting take.
Well, go Midwest.
Go Midwest. Yeah, I think that's our preferred region anyway. So, yeah, hopefully it works out. So, guys, I think the two of you know exactly where I'm going to go with this because I've been kind of harping on this for the entire back half of the season, and now I actually have some data to back it up. It's been my opinion that to reach our highest potential in March, I believe that JoJo and Terrence need to be on the court together more often. These are the two kids on the roster that have next level athleticism and talent. They're also the two with the greatest length on the roster for their positions. And I don't mean height, but more arm length and reach. You guys also both know how much I've loved these two kids since their arrival, as well as the potential that they've flashed since being here, especially in the last month as we've gotten into February. And even though fans, and even sometimes I think coach as well, may not be as, high on these guys at times, whether it's because of perceived effort or proclivity for silly fouls, I think these are the two players on the roster that have another level that we haven't seen yet that could really be the difference in hitting another gear come tournament time, kind of like how we saw UConn last year hit another gear. And now we've got some actual advanced analytics that actually somewhat support my point. I know I've talked in previous episodes about the individual player box score plus minus numbers for the season for both Tugler and Arsenault and trying to make my case. And truth be told, their numbers have actually come down a little bit, especially after this past KU game. But Evan Miyakawa, who runs one of the newer and more sophisticated advanced analytics sites called evanmaya.com, has come out with the exact metric that supports my view on needing to use Tugler and Terrence more during this postseason run. So there's one that's called most impactful defensive player. And this stat goes beyond individual player box score defensive plus minus. It's a more nuanced in measuring when one player comes in and with the rest of the lineup, as they shift to guard others, like when Terrence comes in to play the 4, how does the entire team's defensive efficiency go? And so when he takes that look at things, in the top 15 players in the country, we actually have 3 players on that list. Number 1 is probably not a surprise to you guys, JoJo Tugler. He's just been a defensive force this year whenever he's on the court.
That's the key.
Yeah.
He's got to be on the court.
Yeah, but number 4 will be a shocker.
Kelvin calls him Edward Scissorhands.
But, he every game, right, he makes some type of explosive block that none of us think is even possible. I mean, he comes out of nowhere, right? And it's usually game changing. Now, number 4 on the list is going to be a shocker for you guys. Terrence Arsenault. This is number 4 in the country when he comes in. And then number 15th is Javier Francis. We've got 3 of the top 15 players when they come into the lineup and how the overall defensive efficiency of the team goes. And then he has this other stat that's just fascinating, and he calls it the most efficient 2-man lineups. And in this case, he has Terrence and JoJo as the number 2 duo as far as who's in the lineup when each team executes its most efficient play during games across the entire season. And folks need to understand that this isn't saying that they're the best players or the best duo on our team, but that in analyzing all of the various lineups, it's when those two are on the court together when we make our runs. And I know I've said that in terms of, from what we see and as I do kind of my own self count, but these are stats that he's run. And it's typically when Arsenault is playing the 4 position with Tugler or Roberts at the 5 that we see these runs. So it's going to be interesting to see how coach manages this last game in the Big 12 championships from a minutes perspective. Yeah, and hopefully it gives us kind of a peek of what he's got in store come tourney time. So
if we beat Baylor and we win, I think just one game in the Big 12 tournament, I think that seals the 1 seed in the Midwest. So
yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. If we can just win the Baylor game, and even if it's just one game, we win our first round match, and just like what Tom was saying, play our backups for half the game, get them comfortable heading into March. I think we've got the number 1 seed wrapped up if we do that. Yep. So we'll see. So that's it for our 46th episode of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. We hope you all enjoyed it. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We're also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as the only basketball-centric podcast, or at the GoCougs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We really appreciate the continued support from all. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. Thank you all again for listening, and please be on the lookout next week to download and listen as the next episode drops. Take care, everyone.